Hello, everyone. So, welcome to our mini session, episode 15. So, if you're new here, welcome to Untitled Exception. And we do these sessions weekly. So, these mini sessions are the virtual mini version of our regular monthly meetups of some software developers and enthusiasts. So, this mini session usually has two speakers and it usually lasts for an hour. For this session, we're going to talk about IntersectionObserver API and supercharge your website with serverless functions. So the first speaker will be Arnelle Balane. So take it out.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So for this session, I'll be sharing about um, intersection of servers. So in the web, there are a lot of different observers available. Um, One of them is the intersection observer API. There's also like resize observer, mutation observer, performance observer. We will talk about the others um, in future episodes. But for now, let's focus on intersection observer API. So intersection observer API allows our JavaScript code to get notified whenever like an element's intersection changes. So what is an intersection? Because that might be like a confusing definition. So here I have a sample page. So it's just an HTML page. So some stuff in the head and then a body, which has a container div with an image inside. So let's take a look at that page. It's this one. So the container has some padding so that I can scroll. And here's my image. So just a random buildings image. And I added some percentages here for our reference. So, so this is our page. So an intersection is how much of our target element intersects with with like the viewport, for example. So let's say our target element that we want to observe is this image. So its intersection with the viewport, if in this case it's in here, would be about 50%. And if I scroll up a little, for example here, the image intersection with the viewport is about 20%. So that's intersection. How much of the um, target element, in this case image, intersects with like our viewport, which is the entire page here. So the intersection observer API allows us to be notified whenever this intersection value changes. And that has a lot of potential like use cases. One would be for lazy loading of images. We can implement things like we only load the image when its intersection with the page like reaches a certain point. Another use case would be for lazy loading of lists, for example. So as you scroll, so for example, you have a feed like a Twitter feed, Instagram feed, or like Facebook feed, whatever feed. As you scroll to the bottom, you reach the bottom of the feed. You can trigger like um, fetching additional items in the feed using like intersection observers instead of relying on like the scroll events. So let's take a look at how we can use intersection observer API in code. So here, not it doesn't this doesn't really do anything. It's just a regular page. So in this case, the HTML is not very important. Let's focus on the JavaScript part. So here, our JavaScript is initially empty. Before we use intersection observer API, let's first make sure that the API is available. So we can do feature detection by checking if intersection observer is in window. So this will like result to true if the intersection observer API is available. So Once it's available, we can create a new observer um, object instance by creating a new instance of the intersection observer constructor. So intersection observer accepts two arguments. First is a callback function that it will call every time like the intersection changes, and the second one is or like our options, which we can use to configure its behavior. So let's define our callback function. Uh, so let's zoom in a little bit. So callback function, just a regular function, it accepts a list of entries. Let's console.log this for now. So it accepts a list of entries. So why list of entries? We'll know later. Second one is options. Let's leave it default options for now by just using an empty object. We'll take a look uh, of we'll take a look at these things a bit more later. And so now we have an observer that will call this callback function every time something changes. So let's start observing our image. So we want to know if the intersection of this image with a page changes. So to do that, we can just call observer, observe, and then here we pass our target element or the element that we want to observe. Let's define that. I want it to be the image tag here. So let's see. So now the observer will observe our image. So the reason why this is an array of entries is because we can observe a lot of target elements at the same time using the same observer. So the entries here will be a list of those like changes for like all the target elements that we observe. So let's see. Let's refresh the page. As you can see, here's the initial intersection of the element. Let's inspect it. So we see the intersection ratio. This is like how much like the intersection is. It's 0 because the image is off the screen. It's like somewhere at the bottom. So it doesn't intersect with this window or like this viewport yet. So if we scroll, let's clear the logs. If we scroll, as the image becomes visible, so here the image became visible, it triggered an intersection. Um, it triggered our intersection observer, and these are the entries. So now we see it intersected, like this entry was emitted when the target element was at 0.005 intersection, or like 0.5% intersection with our viewport. So that's nice. It works, but let's try to like understand like how it works. Um, so as you see, it triggers or like it emits like intersection changes every time the the image goes on and off the screen. So if I just scroll here like a little bit at the bottom, the image is going like off the screen and then on the screen. That's why it's emitting a lot of entries. That's because by default, the intersection observer will emit intersection changes at the 0 threshold. So when that means that every time the target element or like the image becomes visible, then that's when it will send intersection changes. When the image becomes completely not visible or like 0 intersection, um, that's when it will emit intersection changes also. And that is controlled by the threshold option. So by default, it's 0. That's why um, when it image becomes visible or when it becomes not visible, it emits like intersection changes. Let's try to change this to, for example, 0.5. So the value of the threshold here is like 1, that's like a value from 0 to 1. So let's say 0.5 means we want the intersection changes to be emitted like when the image crosses like half like when half of the image gets visible. So let's try again. Let's clear. This is the initial. It will always trigger like an initial intersection, which is 0 or whatever is like the current intersection of the element when it was observed. So let's clear that for now. Now, as I scroll down the page, the image already becomes visible, but we're not getting intersection changes yet. That's because we specified that the threshold should be zero point 0.5. That means intersection changes will only like be emitted once the intersection ratio goes above zero point 0.5 or goes below zero point 0.5. So here we're currently at 0, so it's still below zero point 0.5. We're still at 40%, that's still below zero point 0.5. Now as I scroll past this 50% like mark, now get the intersection change. And it's at 51%. So that's how we can control like how much ratio we want in order for us to get notified. So that's through the threshold. So as I scroll down the page, it's not emitting anything else because we only wanted zero point 0.5. Now, as I scroll past the image, let me clear this first. So currently, 70% of the image is still visible. As I scroll down, as I scroll past this like 50% line, it will again, oops, sorry, I messed up my scroll. It will again emit like an intersection change because the intersection ratio went below our threshold. Now it's currently 49% when we wanted like zero point 0.5 or 50%. So that's how like the intersection changes, or like that's how we can configure how at which intersection ratio we want our changes to be emitted. That is through the threshold option. And you can actually specify more than one threshold. So by default, it's 0. You can set like one value here, but you can also set, for example, I want intersection changes to be emitted every time we cross like a line here by like by 10%. So I can specify like 0, 0.1. So we just specify an array of threshold values. 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. Let me just list everything. 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 1. So if I save that and refresh the page, so here's our initial intersection, which is 0 because the image is off screen. As I scroll down, oops, okay, that's too fast. Let me try to slow that down. Okay, 1. So we get our first intersection when the intersection ratio crossed 0. So it's now at 6%. Okay, let's keep scrolling. Second, we get our second intersection, intersection change when we cross the zero point 0.1 threshold, which it's not very clear because the colors are pretty close to each other. But as I keep scrolling and I keep crossing like a boundary between these colors, we'll keep getting intersection changes. So that's how we can specify multiple um, intersection thresholds. Thresholds. So why would you? One thing I can think of where it would be useful is like maybe um, getting notified how much of the image is shown already. So you can display like UI somewhere like you are viewing 50% of the image, or I don't know, depends on how you want to use it, but that's available. Now we are viewing 100% of the image, so that's one. Okay, cool. Um, what else? Um, okay, another option here is so by default, intersection is computed between the target element or the image here and the browser's viewport, which is like the entire like window here. So that's where like the intersection are like are like computed from. But you can actually change. So instead of the viewport itself, you can change it to another element by specifying the root options. But let's not get into that now. Actually, we can. Um, let's see, for example, let's say, for example, let's wrap this inside another container. So I've already prepared as stuff for this. Um, so let's say I added this extra container div to contain our image. Our intersection is still based on the browser viewport, right? As we can see, because it's still logging these entries as I scroll on this page. But let's say, for example, I want the intersection between the image and this red box instead of the entire viewport. So I only want how much of this image intersects with this red box, and I want to get notified when that changes. So we can do that by changing the root option and specifying this red box as the root instead of the viewport. So let's change this to just query it in our container. Save. Now if I refresh, gives us the initial intersection, which is apparently half or like a little bit more than half of the image intersects with this red box. And we can prove that it works because as I keep scrolling on the viewport, it doesn't give us any more intersection entries because the intersection between the two are is fixed. So we can try to let's try clearing this, and then let's try, for example, like increasing the padding to let's say 200. So now we increase the padding. So of course we reduce the intersection between the two, and that emitted this intersection event. So now the intersection is based on this red box by specifying the root option. So not I can't think of a use case for this right now. So but good to know that it's there. So let's remove that. Let's reset everything. Okay. One last thing before we get into like practical examples. Um, there are also cases where we want so by default the viewport. I mean the root is the viewport, right? This window, but there are ways to like expand or reduce the dimensions of our root without like actually resizing the viewport. So for example, let's say I want to know in advance if the image is about to intersect with the viewport. So currently the lowest we can specify is 0. So we can't specify like, for example, negative zero point 0.1 so that we know in advance because that would be invalid if I try to save this. It's out of range. So how do we know in advance that our image is about to intersect? So we do that by like increasing the area of our root, aka the viewport. And we can do that using the root margin option. So root margin, by specifying like positive or negative margins, we can either like increase or decrease the area of our viewport. So let's try adding like 200 px bottom margin so that we know when the image is 200 pixels away from being visible, then that's when we can do something. So, um, but okay, yeah, I got lost. So we are going to specify root margin, and the syntax here is similar to the CSS margin syntax, where you can either specify like just one value which will apply to all sides, or like maybe four, yeah, which will correspond to like the top, right, bottom, and zero margins. So let's try that. And let's refresh. So this is the initial intersection, so we can clear. So as I keep scrolling on the page, oops, that's too fast. Let's try again. As I keep scrolling on the page, I'm trying to okay. Here we got the intersection at 0.02, even though the image is not yet visible on the screen. And here we crossed zero point 0.1, but the image is still not visible on the screen. That's because we extended like the bottom area of our root using root margin by 200 pixels. So this means our target element is already crossed that 200 pixel extra like area below it. So now we're starting to get the intersections. So as we scroll, then okay, even though 10% is still visible, the extra margin is considered in the ratio. So we are actually at 30%, including the margin. So that's root margin. Now you're wondering, these are like we're just going through the all the options. Where will this be useful like in like day-to-day code? So let's take a look at like practical applications of this. So first thing I mentioned is um for lazy loading images. So you kind of so we already like talk about um I mean we're at this point we're already familiar with like the different options to make lazy loading work. That would be by setting the threshold so that we know when we want to load the image. So let's say so we want to load the image when it becomes visible. So we set the threshold to 0. We can remove this for now. And to lazy load the image, we should not set the SRC attribute first. So let's change it to data SRC. So let's refresh. We That's the initial. We can ignore that. So the image is not yet loaded here, but as we scroll the page, we want when it's about to be visible, we want to actually load the image at this point. So inside our callback function, instead of just console.logging the entries, we can actually iterate through each of them and set the SRC attribute to the value of data SRC. So let's just do like entry dot target. So because the entry object here has like target, which is the image being observed, dot SRC equals entry dot target dot dataset dot SRC, which is like the data SRC attribute. And because the intersection changes are emitted like once you go above or below the threshold, we need to make sure that this is only called when the ratio here is above 0 or like the image is already actually visible. So that is 0. Let's see this works. Let's open the network tab, fresh. So initially, the image is not visible, so we're not loading the image. So we're saving the user some bandwidth or like data, not having to download the image that's not being displayed on the screen. So as I scroll down, bam, as the image becomes visible on the screen, that's when the image will be downloaded. So that's lazy loading. But we can actually improve this one more time. So we can add extra checks here where it doesn't load the image multiple times, but let's not do that now. The improvement that I was thinking of is loading the image like exactly when it's about to be visible might be too late anymore because I'm running on localhost. That's why images load instantly. But if the images are hosted online, it could take some time. So the user could see like the not loaded images here if we only load it exactly when it's about to be visible. So what can we do? We can extend the area of our viewport using root margin so that we know in advance when the image is about to be visible. So that's when root margin is useful. So let's set it to just the same thing that we did before, 100 pixels, for example. Now, as I refresh, oops, okay, yeah. So the image is not yet loaded, but as I scroll, um, when the image is still like 200 pixels below the screen, we already start loading it. So that gives us extra time to like download the image before it becomes visible on the screen. So yes, this is one way to do lazy loading native like from just the APIs available on the browser without relying on like scroll events. So that's one thing. And another use case for like intersection observers. would be, as I mentioned, lazy loading or like infinite scrolls. So one technique. Okay, how can I do this? Um, okay, let me just. So I didn't prepare this part, but let's just say I'm just going to create a list with like I don't know how many items. And will this work? Okay. So here we have a list. This could be like posts or tweets or whatever. Now we want to know when we reach the bottom, so that we can lazy load. Oops, what's this? Okay, the image doesn't exist. We will fix that. So that we can, as we scroll to the bottom, we will load like additional um, data from our API. So let's see. So the way we can do that with intersection observers is we can actually add like a hidden element at the bottom or something like a loading bar, for example. Let's just add a paragraph loading so that when we reach the bottom, we can see like, okay, we're loading more posts and we will observe the, this paragraph. So instead of observing the image, but we remove it already, we will observe the paragraph. And since we're not dealing with images anymore, um, let's just console.log. Sige, let's just console.log. Loading more posts from API, let's just say. And this is where you will send API request, for example. So let's refresh. Okay. It lagged because I was already at the bottom of the screen. So this is our feed. And as I scroll, um, let's revisit the code. Note that we have the 200 pixel bottom root margin, which also still applies in this case. So as I scroll to my posts or like the tweets that I'm following, as I reach the bottom, I'm running out of posts to display. So we can load more posts from API at this point. So that as I reach the bottom, we can just insert those posts um, in the UI. So that's achieved by observing an element at the bottom of the list. And when it becomes visible or about to be visible, the intersection observer API will let us know. So that's pretty much it about the intersection observer API. Very useful for front end stuff, especially for image lazy loading and like infinite scrolls, which is still lazy loading. And maybe you have other use cases also that you're encountering that this will be useful. So I hope this helps. And that's it for from me. Thank you.
So that's it for Intersection Observer API, explained and demoed by Arnelle Balane. So any questions from the attending people? No more questions, guys. I think we don't have any questions from the online stream or live. So come on, I'm so busy with that stuff. So no. Guys, question. Kuya Pao, no questions?
Question.
Okay, Dorell, go.
Yeah. So the demo is kind of like now, just one image. Um, but how do you go about like people images that you want to kind of observe or work around?
Yes. So you can actually observe multiple images.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do, for example, I want to like observe all images on the page. You can keep calling observer.observe. You won't create one observer per image. You will just create one observer and then you can use it for all the images. That way you're not creating a lot of observer objects um, per image. And the entries here, like let me just remove it. So the entries array that we receive here will be for each image. whose intersection ratio changed. So that's why like we're looping here so to like accommodate like multiple images that becomes visible on the screen, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So dealing with multiple images, you can observe each of those images and you can receive like an array of entries for each of those images. Yeah.
Okay.
Ah, no, I'm not sharing my screen. That's why I was trying to like explain. Wait, let me share my screen
Okay,
again.
okay.
Okay, as I was saying, you can observe, you can call observer that observe multiple times and just pass all your images here. So, and you don't have to create one observer for each image, just one observer and then use it for all the images. And then in the callback function, this is an array of entries and each entry corresponds to like each image whose ratio or like whose intersection ratio was changed. So that's why like we're looping here to like handle every image that becomes visible, for example. So yeah, we can
But
do things like this.
okay, but yeah, but the target can be like if you specify it like a list of nodes, like query selector all something like that. Does that work? Uh, and can that work, or it should be like
Yes.
individual item?
Observe. Yeah. So observe doesn't accept like a selector. It accepts like an element. So if you want to like observe all the images, you have to like query for all those images like manually yourself, and then like
Yeah,
iterate each image.
I see, I see.
Yeah, and then just call observe on that.
All right.
And okay, I didn't actually mention, but you can also unobserve an image. So like unobserve like an image. For example, once it's already displayed, there's no more need to like lazy load it. So you can just unobserve it. And finally, you can disconnect all observers by calling disconnect. So this will completely disable the observer. So just to add.
All right. Cool, cool, cool. Thank you,
All
thank you.
right. All
Thank you
right.
for the
So,
question.
any other questions?
Uh,
No?
no.
Kuya Pao said wala. So, I think we have to proceed. We can now proceed to our next topic, which is Netlify functions, like supercharge your website with serverless function by Dorell.
All
So,
right.
it's your turn, bruh. It's your turn.
All right. I'm gonna share my screen. All right. I'm here. All right. Let's do this. So all right. So my topic for tonight will be about supercharging your websites using that serverless function. So usually, the problem, at least with static sites, yeah, in your typical Jamstack side JavaScript, APIs and markup, you have this kind of like problem. At some point, is that you'll need to kind of add a custom logic for your workflow for a certain site. Like, for example, you have created a site and you want to add some payments there. You're selling a specific product, and so you have like processing payments, and you want to also send an email for the customer who purchased your product. All right, so that's one use case. You also have like kind of like you can add subscribing functionality to your newsletter. For example, this if you go to react.jsabo.org, you have there. If you input an email there, you will be subscribed to our newsletter using Mailchimp. And for example, also for automation, you kind of like how can use Zapier. So this is kind of the logic that if this and that, so if this happens, then that happens. So it's kind of like it. Do not be confused with that with IFTDT. It's another service, but Zapier also does its thing. It's wonder. It's good. All right. Another more like specific things like resizing an image. So how do you go about that? Do you do that in the browser. So how do you resize an image? How do you query a database? Does the browser allow you to do that? Function calls. These are like server-to-server calls. Example, you need to make a server call that contains passing API tokens that are sensitive that you don't want to kind of like expose it to the public or the whole world. All right. All right. So what is it? What is serverless functions? Basically, they are just scripts that you write and you deploy. So what does that mean is that they are functions or specific function code. It's entirely hidden from the public, meaning they do not live in your browser. They are you write them, and you just kind of push it to the cloud, whatever that means. You deploy it, and how do you interact with it is using um, like any other API service. So you have this standard API methods like get, post, put, patch, delete, and so many more methods. You can create it whatever you need or however you want it. All right. So serverless functions, they say that it's no more servers to maintain. So serverless. So that's the kind of like question. So no more servers to maintain. It's your code only runs when accessed, when it's needed. So just like functions. So just like functions, your app, not all your functions are needed at every time. So only the specific functions are run when a certain functionality or logic is executed. So that's why you have serverless functions. So that's it. Yeah. Why do we need it? So why do you use it? Why use it? Client side JavaScript is limited. So I'm talking about here your browser. You cannot do a lot of things. Although you can do it, you can find like using proxies, but it just exposes you to threats and security that you don't want to, create in the or introduce into your site in the very first hand. All right. So I'll be specific with use cases here. First one is interact with protected APIs such as databases or payment processing services like Stripe or whatever that is. Zapier, I know. PayPal, no. Yeah, because those secret keys, API keys, they always tell you that to not expose this to public, keep this secret, only you know it, blah blah blah. All right. Then you also have this kind of like a typical HTTP request can only process a specific short amount of time. So if you are running such large workloads such as image handling, batch processing, scraping, and a lot more, they can't the browser won't survive. And if your browser is kind of junky because it takes a lot of time to do such thing from one interaction to interaction, then the user experience suffers for your user, and you don't want to do that. So anything that takes too long, you want to offload that and use serverless functions in this case. But in this case, you're gonna need to use background functions. I'll be sharing that later. Anyway, so yeah, who is it useful for? Who are the people that we want to use this? It should be anyone. It should be anyone that like to supercharge the site with some custom logic. So whatever you need for your site, whenever you decide to make a certain workflow, you can add it. So but it should be like without the headache of creating a big app, using a monolithic app, and then hosting and then maintaining wherever you want, wherever you host it, whatever it is. So no more servers, no more headaches, no more scaling issues, etc., etc. So it's handled automatically for you, which is great. All right. So let's take a look at an example. The example that I'll be introducing tonight, you can actually create serverless functions with like AWS Number, GCP. Google File Platform, Google Functions. I don't know, I'm not sure of the name. However, like if you were able to what you call this experienced or used WebTax.io. It was great at the time, although now it's not. It's no longer here. So tonight, let's just use Netlify functions. And what's great about Netlify functions is by default you have this all servers functions. They are coming with defaults that they are deployed uh, in US East 1 AWS Lambda region. They have a gracious 1 gig memory. They have a 10-second immediate execution timeout for HTTP request, the browser. And you have a 15-minute execution limit for background functions. For example, you have using some scraping, you have some batch processing that you need to do. That doesn't cut it with the 10-second timeout. So yeah, that's you have like 15 minutes. And this is all coming free if you have a site on Netlify and can use that with a limits of like 125K per month and 100 hours, total of 100 hours. So you don't have to, fiddle with creating an AWS account, creating some Lambda functions, configuring API gateways, dealing with load balancers, etc., etc. Right. So those things are taken care for you. All you just need to do is write the function and deploy, and you'll be happy. All right. So let's look at the docs so that we know how to use this. All right. So let's go to functions.netlify.com. And here, so basically here, this is like kind of like you have a problem, you have bus support, and basically you're just gonna read this. I already introduced it to you. However, let's just take a look. Some here. So we have here some examples that you can like most of the stuff here that whatever that you need for stuff here, you can click this and see how does that look like. So something like here, I will shortly discuss whatever it is that we need to create this. But you have some examples here. You have also some tutorials that you can browse here. So I think this is a publicly maintained. You can submit your tutorial here. You can add it here whenever you want. You have here also here a workshop, which takes you a GitHub link for David Wells, and you can create your first serverless function and to supercharge your site. So we also have here the docs coming from the Netlify, how to configure this using your site in app.netlify.com. So you have configure and deploy here. So basically, if you have to configure your site using Netlify functions, you just have to go to deploy settings and the functions directory there on your site and specify the directory and anything JavaScript or Go. Yes, you can also build this using Go, so Golang, so you can do that. Yeah, but commonly, if you're familiar with JavaScript, which mostly does VR can use JavaScript. So going back to my slides, let's do a quick demo. Let's go to functions slash playground that notify that app so that we know how it looks like. So currently, Netlify functions example, this is a playground. Um, for example, this hello world example, we have this line of code exports the handler, which assigns a function with parameters event, context, and callback. And the callback, whatever it is that you pass in for two arguments, like this one is the error, and the second argument is the object for his HTTP status code, which is 200, and the body, which is the plain text of hello world. So if we try that, let's say you click this, try it out. Hey, hello. All right. And we see that now we have this hello world. And if we go back, oops, let's kind of zoom out, too much zoom. And we can here, we also have an async version. So we can kind of like, instead of the typical callback thing, you can just use this async here. and use the return. So we have like status code 200 and the body same. All right, and if you go down, we have here the same thing, although it's written in synchronously. All right, so here another sample. Hello name. Customize the greeting, calling the lambda endpoint with optional name parameters. So here in the code, it accepts a query string parameter name, but if you don't pass it, it will default by world. So should expecting like hello. If we don't pass anything, it's gonna be defaulting to world. So hello world. Let's do that. Let's click this. It's taking long, but okay. Hello world. Okay, and how about we hello the rel? So the rel. All right. Hello the rel. And here. So you see here is the first string parameter. All right. We also have here a post request. So here only we track here if the method is post, and we return a status code of 405 and the method is not allowed. So here, although you can try it here and say hello John. All right, who's John? Hello John. All right, so if we kind of like use this, okay, let's try that. You see, this is a get request. This one, the other example, this one sends it in form of method post. So you see the difference that here it says it returns the status code of 405 in a body of method not allowed. So works as it is, however you want it. So I will leave this up to you for you to explore. I'll be coming short of time here, so I'm gonna do a quick demo. But there are so many use cases here that you want to try. Maybe do some fetch, interacting with another API, and you can do this, or that. You can also send a Slack message, incoming. You create your webhook there, and then specify here the webhook URL, method, post, the text that you want to say, specific Slack channel, whatever that is, and so many more. So yeah, once again, you have here examples that you can um, take a look, refer to, or for you to be able to create your serverless function, right? So going back to my slides, let's do a live code or a demo here so that we have like something like we can close the gap in our idea here and how to create this kind of like try it on our own. So we have here a let's do that here in Cebu Tech Community's website. So oh no, it doesn't work. The link doesn't work. Anyhow, what's happening? All right. So if we go to Cebu Tech Communities.info, all right, it's gonna wait. Happen to my internet. No, what's the theme? Oh, I have internet. Why is it not working? Oh no, Cloudflare issues. Jeez. This one. All right, it works. Why is it not working? Because of the protocol HTTP? No. All right. Anyhow, so Cebu Tech Communities.info. Yeah. So we created this website last month, October, for the Hacktoberfest, and we have here, the participating communities, AWS, Angular, and all the tech communities here. So in this site is created. Let's take a look at the code. This site is plain HTML, which basically is just using the hyperspace by HTML5 of the net. So if you go to the bottom part, design here, the attribution for where this is coming from is there. All right. So according to their site, which to configure we have to go to settings, deploy settings, and in the functions we have to specify the functions directory. So we go here to sites, and we go to deploys, and we go to deploy settings, and we scroll down, and on the left here we see functions. So here, all right, I already configured this earlier. So how about we go on other sites? Let's try this one. So deploys, deploy settings, functions, and we set this to functions here. All right. So this is the directory where I'll put all my serverless functions right there. Let's go back to Cebu Tech communities and right there. Ooh. Here. So this is the settings. I just missed it. All right. So either way, you can do this by configuring here, but you can also use the Netlify.2ml documentation to do that, like specifying this, creating this actual file in your root directory, and specifying this one. So I'll be kind of like lazy here, so I'm just gonna use this, and let's create functions directory there, and right there it's already set. And let's do some coding. All right, I'll create a new branch, and let's see, UE functions, UE functions. All right, this is where I want things to be. We create the functions directory in my root directory, and I'm gonna code. I'm gonna create a new file. Let's say hello world. Hello, hello.js. All right, hello.js, and let's work on that. All right, let's go to functions, hello.js, and we specify our code exports the handler. Let's make it the first event is the event context and the callback. And we also want to, callback. So I'll be not using the async here. The first argument is the error, so I'm just gonna leave it null. And I'm gonna burn a status code of 200 and a body, which should be a JSON format, and say message hello from Uncaught and such. All right. Now it's done. Let's commit this one. Okay. I hope I type everything correctly. So let's commit this. Um, hello function, serverless, and hello serverless function. All right, and let's push this to the unique functions. Right. Right. And it's there. All right. And as you can see, you go to the side of the deploys. It's here. Processing branch deploy, UE processing. And all right, let's click this. As you can see, all right, it's there. Plus, it also has an additional functions here. Let's take a look at the logs. We see that there were one file that was uploaded, and we have one new function that were uploaded too. It's really fast, and actually you can use your Netlify function right now. And here, if you click this, all right, and this is your endpoint, which takes your kind of like the sites that you have. So you have HTTPS, UE functions, dash dash. This is my branch name and my Netlify subdomain, app subdomain plus this kind of like hidden thing. They put this in a dot, so it separates from the folder that you probably be creating inside your root directory. So if you want to do that, and not define functions. So if I click this, and actually they have here a log here that will log our request. So I'm gonna typing this now. All right, and as you can see, we have here a JSON response message hello from Uncaught exception. And if we go back here, pretty much it logs our first Netlify function, surplus function using Netlify functions. Kind of twisting iteration, So yeah, that's kind of like the idea. And everything that you want to code here, you can add here. All right. So yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, I'll leave any questions you have for me. Thank you, and that's it.
Thank you,
So
Dorell.
that was quick. So that's it for Dorel and
And
Netlify serverless functions. Any questions, guys?
Mm, Yes, I have questions.
Okay.
all right.
First question is so after you deploy your function,
Yeah.
and if your app is using like a custom domain, will it use the custom domain
Yes.
for the function? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Currently, because I was using not the production branch, which is the master or main in the new ones. So if you were using the master, it will take your domain what you set in your app, and you can use that from there.
second question is there a way to like test the functions like locally, like without having to deploy them? Like let's
Yeah.
say you were still in development.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah. So actually, if you kind of like oops, I'm gonna share my screen. I'm still sharing my screen. All right. So you go to Netlify, the first one. Um, have this process, and I don't know if I can find it here, but um, the docs here, you can actually start your site with Netlify dev there, and from here it's gonna start a localhost version of your site, including the Netlify functions there, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You also have Netlify Lambda. I think this is a web page. Lambda. Case. This one. So it helps you like if because our example is pretty simple, right? The site. But what if you're using like a frameworks or it's like Next or Gatsby or whatever UPress, whatever what you call this whatever you need. So you have this Netlify Lambda, and you can actually install this, and you can have this serving your site locally, including the instructions here. Yeah, but Netlify Dev is the kind of like the new one. So if you're far better using that compared to this one, this was created before it was there. Like, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. No more questions from me.
Okay.
Okay.
So any other questions, guys?
Um,
Okay. Ria Pao said no questions. So I think that's the end of this session.
thank
So
you.
it's time for the outro. Okay.
All right.
So that's it for this session, guys and girls, anyone who's watching. And if you have some topics that you want us to discuss, like just leave a comment. And for more tech updates and discussions like this, you know the drill. Like and subscribe. Bye bye. Say bye bye
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
everyone.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.